I am Alyssa, 24 years old, sitting in my small apartment staring at the desperate email from my family. The words blur as memories from 6 years ago flood back. The day my parents casually announced they had used my entire college fund to pay for my sister Natalie's extravagant wedding. You can always take out loans, they had shrugged, dismissing my dreams. Before I share what I did when they came begging for help years later, let me know where you are watching from, and hit subscribe if you have ever had to stand up for yourself against family. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in the suburbs of Boston. Our house was decent size, not too fancy, but comfortable enough. My father, James, worked as a civil engineer at a respected firm in the city. He was strict detail-oriented and had high expectations for both his work and his family. My mother, Diana, worked at the local bank, climbing her way up from teller to loan officer over the years. She was softer than Dad, but still maintained the family image was everything. Then there was my sister, Natalie. 6 years older than me, Natalie was everything I was not. She had inherited our mother's striking features, tall, with natural blonde hair, that seemed to catch the light perfectly. In high school, she was the cheerleading captain, homecoming queen, and had a social calendar that kept our parents busy with transportation duties and chaperoning events. I was different, shorter, with unruly brown hair that never seemed to behave the way I wanted it to. Where Natalie was outgoing and magnetic, I was quieter and found comfort in books. I learned early on that in our family dynamic, Natalie was the star, and I was the supporting character. The differences in how we were treated were subtle at first, but became more obvious as we grew older. Natalie got the larger bedroom with the window seat overlooking the backyard. When she wanted designer jeans that were popular, our parents found a way to afford them. When I asked for a similar pair months later, I was told they were impractical and expensive. Natalie took dance lessons at the most prestigious studio in town. When I expressed interest in joining, my mother suggested I try the community center classes instead, because they were more affordable. For my sister's 16th birthday, our parents surprised her with a used but still impressive car. For mine, they gave me a transit pass and explained the value of learning to navigate public transportation. Despite these differences, there was one thing my parents were consistent about: education was important. From the time we were young, they had established college funds for both of us. Every birthday and Christmas, relatives would contribute to these accounts. "Your education is an investment in your future," my father would say while depositing checks. I took this seriously. I saved every dollar from my red envelope money during Lunar New Year celebrations, birthday gifts, and eventually my part-time jobs at the local library and later a coffee shop. By my sophomore year of high school, I had contributed nearly $5,000 to my own college fund. My parents seemed proud of my responsibility, often using me as an example when Natalie would splurge on unnecessary purchases. The relationship between my sister and me was complicated. Natalie wasn't deliberately cruel, but she had a way of making me feel less than. When I would talk about my dream of attending Harvard and becoming a doctor, she would roll her eyes. "Not everyone needs to be a brainiac, Alyssa," she would say. "Some of us prefer to actually enjoy life." Still, there were moments of genuine sisterly connection. When I was struggling with a particularly harsh math teacher in ninth grade, Natalie helped me draft an email requesting additional help. When a boy made fun of my science fair project, she confronted him in the hallway and made him apologize. Throughout high school, I poured myself into academics and carefully selected extracurricular activities. I joined the debate team, volunteered at the local hospital, and participated in science Olympiads. I maintained a perfect GPA, stayed up late studying for standardized tests and research scholarship opportunities. While my friends were posting about parties on social media, I was creating spreadsheets of potential universities, their admission requirements, and estimated costs. My parents appeared supportive, though most of their attention remained focused on Natalie's social life and later her budding career in real estate. "At least we don't have to worry about Alyssa." I overheard my mother telling a friend on the phone once, "She has her head on straight." What they didn't see was how much pressure I put on myself. How I would cry in the shower when I got an A- instead of an A. How I calculated and recalculated the growing balance in my college fund, trying to determine if it would be enough for the schools on my wish list. how I scoured the internet for scholarship opportunities, often staying up until 2 in the morning completing applications. By senior year, my efforts had created results. I was ranked first in my class. I had completed 7 AP courses with perfect scores. My SAT scores placed me in the 99th percentile nationally. My college counselor told me I was the most promising student she had worked with in years. All of this was for one goal: to attend a prestigious university, preferably Harvard, and eventually medical school. The college fund that my parents had started, combined with my own contributions and potential scholarships, would make this possible. I would be the first person in our extended family to attend an Ivy League school. The thought filled me with equal parts pride and anxiety. Meanwhile, Natalie had graduated from a state college with a business degree and had started working for a real estate company. She had her own apartment in the city and seemed to be doing well. Our parents would proudly share stories about the properties she had sold and the important clients she was working with. I was happy for her success, even as I wished for similar attention to my own accomplishments. What none of us knew was that the path I had so carefully planned was about to be dramatically altered by my sister's romantic life and my parents' misplaced priorities. Looking back now, I sometimes wonder how different things might have been if I had sensed what was coming. The spring of my senior year should have been exciting. My hard work had paid off, and I had been accepted to several prestigious universities, including my dream school, Harvard. I had also secured a partial scholarship that would cover about 30% of the tuition. The remaining amount would come from the college fund my parents had established, and my own savings. During this time, I was also experiencing my first serious relationship. Jake was in my AP chemistry class, quiet, thoughtful, with kind brown eyes and a quick smile that made my heart flutter. Unlike the other boys I had briefly dated, Jake actually understood my ambitions and supported them. When I would stress about maintaining my perfect GPA, he would bring me tea and offer to quiz me. When I got my Harvard acceptance letter, he brought me a crimson sweatshirt he had ordered weeks before, confident in my success. "You're going to change the world someday, Alyssa," he told me as we sat on his parents' porch swing one evening. "I'm just glad I get to see the beginning of it." His family was supportive too, especially his mother, Sarah. Their home became a refuge for me, a place where my academic achievements were celebrated rather than simply expected. Sarah would ask me detailed questions about my college plans and seemed genuinely interested in my answers. She kept a copy of my acceptance letter on their refrigerator alongside Jake's. While my world was expanding with possibilities, my sister Natalie's life was also changing. At 27, she had been dating casually for years, but never seemed to settle into a serious relationship. Then she met Tyler at a real estate conference in Chicago. He was a successful entrepreneur who had made his fortune in tech startups before moving into commercial real estate investments. He was handsome, charming, and clearly wealthy, judging from the luxury car he drove and the designer suits he wore. Their relationship progressed quickly. Within 6 months, he had proposed with a diamond ring that looked like something from a celebrity magazine. Natalie called our parents, immediately screaming with excitement. I had never seen my normally composed sister so emotional. Our household was immediately transformed by wedding planning. My mother took a leave of absence from work to help Natalie with the arrangements. My father started making phone calls to family members and friends, proudly announcing the engagement. Our dining room table disappeared under bridal magazines, fabric swatches, and catering menus. In the midst of this whirlwind, I noticed something concerning. My parents had stopped mentioning my college plans. When I brought up the orientation date for Harvard, my mother nodded distractedly while comparing different shades of pink for the bridesmaid dresses. When I mentioned the deposit deadline was approaching, my father said, "We'll get to that soon," before returning to his spreadsheet of potential wedding venues and their costs. I shared my concerns with Jake one night as we worked on calculus homework in his family's kitchen. "I'm probably just being paranoid," I said, chewing on my pencil eraser. "But it's like they've forgotten I'm going to college in a few months. They're just excited about the wedding," Jake reassured me, squeezing my hand. "Once things settle down, they'll refocus on you." "I hope so," I replied, though a knot of worry had formed in my stomach. That worry grew when I overheard my parents discussing finances late one night. I'd come downstairs for a glass of water and stopped outside the kitchen when I heard my name. "What about Alyssa's tuition deposit?" my mother was asking. "It's due next week." "I know." My father sounded stressed. "But the venue wants a 50% deposit, and with the date change, we're looking at peak season rates now. Could we maybe use some of the college fund temporarily, just until the wedding is over and we can replenish it?" There was a long pause before my father responded. "Maybe. Let me look at the numbers again." I crept back upstairs, telling myself they wouldn't actually touch my college fund. They had been saving it for years. They knew how important it was to me. The next day, my official acceptance package arrived from Harvard, complete with financial aid information and housing options. I brought it to dinner, excited to discuss the details with my parents. But the conversation quickly turned to Natalie's wedding again. "The florist called," my mother announced. "The peonies might not be in season, so we're looking at roses instead. They'll be imported from Ecuador." "And the band Natalie wants is available," my father added. "They're more than we budgeted for, but Tyler insists on having live music." I waited for a break in the conversation before sliding my acceptance packet across the table. "I need to make some decisions about housing and meal plans," I said, "and the tuition deposit is due soon." My parents exchanged a look I couldn't quite interpret. "Let's talk about that this weekend," my father said, returning to his meal. But the weekend came and went without any discussion. When I brought it up again, there was always some wedding emergency that took precedence. The uneasiness in my stomach grew into a persistent anxiety that followed me through my final weeks of high school. Even as I walked across the stage as valedictorian, part of me wondered if I would actually be attending Harvard in the fall. The college fund that had once seemed so secure now felt like a mirage, shimmering and insubstantial in the heat of Natalie's wedding plans. The evening that changed everything started normally enough. I had just returned from a study session at Jake's house and was planning to finalize my Harvard housing application online. My parents called me downstairs for what they described as an important family discussion. I found them sitting stiffly in the living room, the formal room we rarely used except for holidays and special occasions. The fact that they had chosen this location instead of our usual gathering spot at the kitchen table immediately put me on edge. "Sit down, Alyssa," my father said, gesturing to the armchair across from them. My mother was fidgeting with her wedding ring, a habit she had when she was nervous. "Is everything okay?" I asked, perching on the edge of the chair. My father cleared his throat. "Your mother and I need to discuss something with you about college." A cold feeling settled in my chest. "What about college?" "As you know, Natalie's wedding has required significant financial resources," he began, his voice taking on the formal tone he used when making business calls. "The venue, catering, flowers, band dress, all of it has added up to more than we initially anticipated." My mother jumped in. "Tyler's family is very well established, and we want to make sure the wedding reflects that. Your sister only gets married once, after all." I nodded slowly, the cold feeling spreading through my body. "What does this have to do with my college?" My father took a deep breath. "We've had to make some difficult financial decisions. The wedding expenses have stretched our resources beyond what we expected." "What he's trying to say," my mother interjected, "is that we've had to reallocate some funds to ensure Natalie has the wedding she deserves." "Reallocate," I repeated, though I already knew what they meant. "We've used your college fund to cover the wedding expenses," my father finally said. "All of it." The words hit me like a physical blow. "All of it. You used my entire college fund, almost $80,000. "It was a necessary decision," my father said defensively. "Natalie's wedding is a once-in-a-lifetime event, and college isn't." My voice rose. "The money you promised me, the money I've been counting on my entire life, you just gave it away for flower arrangements and a band." "You're being dramatic," my mother said, frowning. "There are other ways to pay for college. Many students take out loans." Loans. I was shouting now, something I never did with my parents. "You've been telling me since I was 5 years old that you were saving for my education. I've been working part-time jobs since I was 14 to contribute to that fund. I turned down senior trips and prom dresses to save for college. And now you're telling me to take out loans. Lower your voice, my father warned. This decision has been made. We can discuss your options for financing school, but the college fund has been spent. How could you do this to me? Tears were streaming down my face now. You promised me that money. I earned that money. Natalie is family too, my mother said. Sometimes in families, we make sacrifices for each other. When has Natalie ever sacrificed anything for me? I demanded. When have any of you sacrificed for me? The conversation was interrupted by the front door opening. Natalie walked in carrying several shopping bags. The bridesmaids' gifts finally arrived, she announced cheerfully before taking in the scene in the living room. What's going on? We just told Alyssa about the college fund, my father explained. Natalie set down her bags and crossed her arms. Are you throwing a tantrum about that seriously, Alyssa? I stared at her in disbelief. They used my entire college fund for your wedding. Money they promised me. Money I contributed to. And you think I'm throwing a tantrum? It's a wedding, Natalie said, as if that explained everything. My wedding, the most important day of my life. Don't you want me to have the perfect day? What about my life? I countered. What about Harvard? The future I've been working toward for years. Oh, please. Natalie rolled her eyes. You can still go to college, take out loans like regular people, or go to community college for 2 years and then transfer. It's not the end of the world. This is unbelievable, I said, looking from Natalie to my parents. You're all acting like my dreams don't matter at all. You're being selfish, Natalie accused. This is supposed to be a happy time for our family, and you're making it all about you. I'm being selfish, I repeated, incredulous. You're spending my education money on a party, and I'm the selfish one. That's enough, my father said firmly. The decision has been made. We can look into financial aid options for you, but this discussion is over. I stood up, my whole body shaking. You're right. This discussion is over, and so is my trust in this family. I ran upstairs and grabbed my phone, texting Jake through tears, "Can I come over? Emergency." His response was immediate. Of course. Everything okay? Nothing is okay, I typed back. I'll explain when I get there. I threw some clothes and essentials into my backpack, then grabbed the acceptance letter from Harvard that I had proudly displayed on my desk. As I passed the living room again, my family was still there now discussing wedding seating arrangements, as if our conversation had never happened. I'm going to Jake's, I announced, not that they seemed particularly concerned. Don't stay out too late, my mother said absently, examining a seating chart. We have the menu tasting tomorrow and you should be there. I didn't bother responding. As I walked the 12 blocks to Jake's house in the fading evening light, I felt something breaking inside me. The carefully constructed image I had of my family, of my place in it, was shattering into pieces too small to ever reassemble. When Sarah Jake's mom opened the door and saw my tear-streaked face, she immediately pulled me into a hug. Oh, honey, what happened? And there, in the warm kitchen of a family that wasn't mine, I told them everything. How my parents had taken all my college savings without warning. How they expected me to simply adjust my dreams or go into debt. How my sister had called me selfish for being upset. They can't do that, Sarah said, outrage clear in her voice. That money was for your education. It was promised to you. Apparently they can, I replied, my voice hollow. It's in their names. Legally, it's their money to use however they want. It's wrong, Jake said quietly, holding my hand across the table. No matter what the law says, it's wrong. Sarah was already in problem-solving mode, a trait I had always admired about her. Okay, first things first. You'll stay here tonight. No arguments, she added when I started to protest. Then tomorrow we'll look at your options. Harvard has financial aid scholarships. There are solutions here, Alyssa. For the first time since hearing my parents' announcement, I felt a small flicker of hope. My educational future might not be destroyed, just altered. And sitting in that kitchen with people who actually seemed to care about my dreams, I made a decision that would shape the next several years of my life. I would find a way forward with or without my family's support. Natalie's wedding was scheduled for the first weekend in June, just after my high school graduation. The venue was an exclusive oceanfront resort in Cape Cod that normally booked 2 years in advance. Somehow my sister and parents had secured it with just months to spare, no doubt at an enormous premium. Despite my feelings about how the wedding was being funded, I was still expected to participate as a bridesmaid. My sister had selected 6 of her friends, me and 2 cousins, to form her bridal party. The dresses were custom-made pale pink silk that cost more than 3 months of my coffee shop salary. The shoes, jewelry, professional hair, and makeup all added up to an amount that made me sick to my stomach every time I thought about it. "You look beautiful," my mother said on the morning of the wedding as I stood in the resort's bridal suite watching makeup artists and hairstylists flutter around Natalie. "Thanks," I replied flatly. I felt like an actress in a play going through the motions of a performance I hadn't agreed to. The wedding itself was every bit as extravagant as the price tag suggested. 300 guests watched as Natalie walked down an aisle covered in rose petals imported from Ecuador. The flowers alone had cost what would have been my first semester's tuition. The 7-tier cake, the crystal champagne flutes, the live band that had once played at a presidential inauguration, all of it screamed excess. I smiled mechanically for photographs, made appropriate small talk with relatives, and avoided the open bar, despite the temptation to numb my feelings. Throughout the day, I kept thinking about the alternative reality, where this day had been a normal, reasonably priced wedding, and I was preparing to leave for Harvard in the fall. During the reception, I overheard a conversation that confirmed what I had suspected. Tyler, my new brother-in-law, was speaking with a groomsman near the bar, apparently unaware that I was sitting alone just around the corner. "The tech investment didn't pan out," I heard him say. "Lost almost everything I put into it. Thank God for Natalie's parents covering most of the wedding. Couldn't have swung it otherwise." "They covered it." His friend sounded surprised. "I thought you were loaded, man." "I was." Tyler laughed, though it sounded forced. "Market took a dive. I'll bounce back, though. Always do." I slipped away before they could notice me, feeling a fresh wave of anger. Not only had my college fund been sacrificed, but it had apparently bailed out Tyler's financial problems as well. Later in the evening, I found a quiet moment with Sarah, who had been invited as a courtesy to Jake's family. "How are you holding up?" she asked, finding me alone on the terrace. "Playing my part," I replied. "Just a few more hours until this charade is over." Sarah looked around at the lavish decorations and lowered her voice. "Have you made a decision about school?" I nodded. "I can't afford Harvard, not without taking on massive debt. I've decided to attend the community college for 2 years and then transfer. I can live at home and work full-time to save money." The plan tasted like ash in my mouth, but it was practical. Sarah hesitated, then spoke carefully. "Jake and I have been talking. We have the spare room since his sister left for college last year. If you wanted to stay with us while you attend school, you'd be welcome." I stared at her, unable to process what she was offering. "You would let me live with you?" "Of course," she said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "You're practically family already. It would give you a chance to focus more on school and work fewer hours." For the second time in recent weeks, I found myself fighting back tears, though these were different from the angry ones I had shed in my parents' living room. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll think about it." Sarah smiled. "The offer is open." The next morning, I made one of the hardest decisions of my young life. I formally declined my acceptance to Harvard, deferring the offer for a year while I considered my options. Instead, I enrolled in the local community college, signing up for a full course load while maintaining my job at the coffee shop. I also wrote a letter to my parents explaining that I would be moving in with Jake's family. I didn't ask for permission. I simply informed them of my decision. I left the letter on my carefully made bed, packed 2 suitcases with my essential belongings, and walked out of my childhood home on a sunny Sunday afternoon. My mother called that evening, alternating between guilt trips and anger. "How could you just leave like that? What will people think?" "Probably the same thing they thought when you took my college fund," I replied calmly. "That in this family, appearances matter more than promises." "You're being dramatic," she insisted. "Moving in with your boyfriend's family? It's inappropriate. So is stealing your daughter's education money," I countered. "I'm doing what I need to do to secure my future, since you and Dad clearly won't." We ended the call with nothing resolved. My father tried next that his approach more pragmatic. Your mother is upset. Come home and we can discuss this like adults. I am being an adult, I told him. I'm taking responsibility for my education and my life, something I learned to do because you and Mom were always too busy with Natalie. That's not fair, he protested. Neither is what you did to me, I replied before ending the call. Natalie never called. She and Tyler left for a 3-week honeymoon in the Maldives, their social media flooded with pictures of overwater bungalows and sunset dinners on the beach. The contrast between her life and my new reality couldn't have been starker. But as the summer progressed, I found an unexpected peace in my new living arrangement. Sarah and her husband treated me with respect and kindness. They gave me space when I needed it and included me in family dinners and outings. For the first time, I experienced what it felt like to live in a home where I wasn't an afterthought. The transition to community college and financial independence was harder than I had anticipated. I increased my hours at the coffee shop to nearly full-time, while taking a full course load at school. My days started at 5 in the morning and often didn't end until midnight, when I would finally finish my assignments. Jake and I tried to maintain our relationship, but when he left for UCLA on a partial scholarship that fall, the distance proved too challenging. We agreed to end things romantically, but promised to stay friends. True to his word, he checked in regularly, and his family continued to treat me as one of their own. You'll always have a home with us, Sarah assured me when I offered to find my own place after Jake left. This isn't just about your relationship with Jake. We care about you. It was a concept that felt foreign. My own family had never put my needs first. Why would Jake's my parents made sporadic efforts to reconnect, usually around holidays or family events? These interactions were strained, with neither side willing to fully address the betrayal that had led to our estrangement. They would ask about my classes, I would give polite but brief answers, and we would part ways with nothing resolved. Natalie and Tyler settled into married life in a sprawling house in an upscale neighborhood. She had quit her real estate job, apparently planning to be a full-time socialite. Their lives, as documented on social media, seemed to revolve around charity galas, country club memberships, and expensive vacations. Meanwhile, I was working 40 hours a week, slinging coffee, attending classes, and studying until my eyes burned. The contrast was painful, but I refused to let bitterness consume me. Instead, I channeled my energy into excelling academically. My dedication caught the attention of one of my professors, Rachel Chen, who taught my business management course. After I earned the highest grade on a particularly challenging project, she asked me to stay after class. You have a gift for financial analysis, she told me. Have you considered pursuing it further? I explained my situation, the lost Harvard opportunity, my current plan to transfer to a 4-year school after completing my associate's degree. I might be able to help with that, she said. There's a scholarship program for transfer students with exceptional academic records. With your grades and obvious talent, you'd be a strong candidate. Professor Chen became more than just an instructor. She became a mentor and advocate. She helped me refine my academic path, wrote glowing recommendations, and connected me with professionals in the finance industry. When I confided in her about my family situation, she shared her own story of overcoming parental disapproval to pursue her education. Sometimes, the family we choose is more supportive than the one we're born into, she told me. It doesn't make the pain any less real, but it does give us strength to move forward. My life during those 2 years was challenging. I lived on ramen noodles and peanut butter sandwiches to save money. My wardrobe consisted of coffee shop uniforms and thrift store finds. I skipped movies with friends to pick up extra shifts. I stayed up late completing assignments and woke up early to review notes before class. But there were bright spots too. I made friends with other determined students, many of whom were also working their way through school. I found joy in mastering complex financial concepts. I discovered a talent for investment analysis that excited me in a way medicine never had. Throughout this time, my family remained distant. My parents would occasionally call or text, but our conversations remained superficial. Natalie continued her charmed life, posting photos of her redecorated mansion or weekend trips to New York. She never acknowledged the role my sacrificed education had played in creating her lifestyle. With Professor Chen's guidance, I applied for and won a full scholarship to complete my bachelor's degree in finance at a well-regarded state university. The day I received the acceptance letter, I called Sarah first, then Jake, and finally Professor Chen. I didn't call my parents until 3 days later, and when I did, their response was predictably lukewarm. "That's nice, dear," my mother said, "though it's not Harvard." "No," I agreed. "It's better, because I earned this completely on my own." By the time I graduated with my bachelor's degree, I had secured an internship at a prestigious financial consulting firm. The internship led to a full-time position as a junior analyst. My starting salary was modest by industry standards, but to someone who had been working for minimum wage plus tips, it felt like a fortune. I found a small but clean apartment of my own, thanked Sarah and her family for their years of support, and began building my independent adult life. I continued taking night classes, working toward an MBA. I made new friends, dated occasionally, and slowly discovered who I was outside of my family's shadow. Through it all, I maintained minimal contact with my parents and sister. Holiday cards, occasional phone calls, brief visits when social obligations made them unavoidable. They seemed to accept our new distant relationship as normal, never acknowledging the betrayal that had created it. I was 24 years old, working as a financial analyst with a growing reputation for insightful investment strategies. I had completed my MBA with honors, was debt-free, thanks to scholarships and careful money management, and had even started my own modest investment portfolio. The life I had built wasn't the one I had dreamed of as a teenager, but it was mine earned through my own efforts and determination. I had found a strange peace in that realization until an unexpected phone call shattered the careful boundaries I had constructed. 4 years had passed since that fateful evening, when my parents had casually informed me they had repurposed my college fund for my sister's wedding. In that time, I had transformed from a devastated teenager with shattered dreams into a successful young professional with a promising career in financial management. My diligence and analytical skills had earned me a rapid series of promotions. At 24, I was one of the youngest financial directors at my firm, managing a small team and handling several important client portfolios. My apartment, while not luxurious, was comfortable and in a desirable neighborhood. I had a small but reliable network of friends, most of whom knew nothing about my estranged family. It was a Tuesday evening when my mother's name appeared on my phone screen. This was unusual. Our communication typically followed a predictable pattern of brief monthly calls and obligatory holiday exchanges. Seeing her calling on a random weeknight sent an immediate wave of unease through me. "Hello," I answered cautiously. "Alyssa." My mother's voice sounded strained, lacking its usual composure. "I need to talk to you about something important." "What's going on?" I asked, setting aside the investment report I'd been reviewing. "It's complicated." She paused and I could hear her taking a deep breath. "There's been a situation with Natalie and Tyler, and it affects all of us." The dread in my stomach intensified. "What kind of situation?" "Tyler has been—" She hesitated. "Making some unwise investments. Apparently he's lost a significant amount of money. Their assets, the house, the cars, everything is gone." I sat down processing this information. "Gone? What do you mean, gone?" "He was involved in some kind of investment scheme, using clients' money improperly. There's an investigation. He's left the country, Alyssa. Just disappeared last week. Left Natalie with nothing but debt and legal problems." The revelation struck me with a mixture of shock and, I'm ashamed to admit, a tinge of vindication. "Where is Natalie now?" "She's moved back home with us. She's—" My mother's voice cracked something I had rarely heard. "She's pregnant, Alyssa. 3 months along, and she has no job, no health insurance, nothing." I closed my eyes, trying to process everything. "I'm sorry to hear that. It must be a difficult time for all of you." "It's worse than you know," my mother continued. "Your father and we tried to help them when things first started going bad. We took out a second mortgage on the house to give them money to pay off some debts." "You did what?" I couldn't keep the disbelief from my voice. "We thought it would be temporary. Tyler promised he would pay it back once his investments recovered, but now he's gone and you're stuck with the debt." I finished for her. Yes. The word was barely audible. We can't make the payments, Alyssa. We're going to lose the house. A strange calm settled over me as the pieces fell into place. And you're calling me because you need money. There was a pause before my mother responded. We need help, yes. About $75,000 to catch up on the mortgage and keep the house. I wouldn't ask if we weren't desperate. The amount struck me like a slap. Almost exactly what my college fund had been worth. $75,000, I repeated slowly. I know it's a lot, my mother said quickly, but you're doing well in your career. Your father and I are so proud of what you've accomplished, even if we don't say it enough. And family helps family in times of crisis. Family helps family. I echoed the words, tasting bitter. Like when you and Dad helped me with my college dreams. Alyssa, please. This isn't the time to bring up old grievances. We're about to lose our home. Your sister is pregnant and has nowhere else to go. It's interesting that you consider the theft of my education money an old grievance, but expect me to view your current financial emergency as my problem. That's not fair, my mother protested. The situations are completely different. Are they? I asked. Because from where I'm sitting, they look remarkably similar. You made financial decisions that prioritized Natalie, and now you're facing the consequences. We're your parents, she said, her voice hardening. After everything we've done for you. What exactly have you done for me, Mom? Since you took my college fund, what support have you provided? Did you help me with tuition, living expenses, health insurance? The silence on the other end of the line was telling. I built my career from nothing. I continued. I worked full-time while taking classes. I lived on ramen noodles and coffee shop leftovers. I did it all without a cent from you or Dad. So you're refusing to help us? She asked, disbelief evident in her tone. I didn't say that. I said I find the situation ironic. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I need to think about this. I'll call you tomorrow. I ended the call before she could respond, my hands shaking slightly. I sat in my darkened apartment for a long time, staring at nothing, memories and emotions swirling through me like a storm. After an hour of internal debate, I opened my laptop and drafted an email. I attached a PDF document from my personal files, a list of student loan companies, their interest rates, and application requirements. The same information I had frantically researched the night my parents told me my college fund was gone. The body of the email was brief. Mom and Dad, I've given your situation some thought. Attached is a list of loan providers that might be able to help. As you once told me, you can always take out loans. Alyssa. I hit send before I could reconsider, then turned off my phone and went to bed. I slept surprisingly well that night, better than I had in years. The next morning, my phone was filled with missed calls and messages. My father had called 7 times. My mother had sent a series of increasingly angry texts. Even Natalie had reached out her message, a mix of pleading and accusation. How can you be so cold? I'm pregnant and about to be homeless. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I went to work focused on my clients' financial issues rather than my family's. But by evening, a different kind of message appeared. A voicemail from Natalie that sounded nothing like her usual confident, somewhat entitled tone. Alyssa, it's me. I know you're angry. You have every right to be. What Mom and Dad did to you with your college money was wrong. What I let them do was wrong. I never thanked you for that sacrifice, forced as it was. I never acknowledged what it cost you. Her voice cracked. I was selfish and caught up in my perfect wedding to a man who turned out to be a criminal and a liar. I'm not asking you to forgive me or them. I'm just asking you to call me back. Please. It was the first time in 6 years that anyone in my family had acknowledged the wrong that had been done to me. It wasn't a full apology, but it was something. I waited until the following day, giving myself time to process my feelings before returning Natalie's call. Thank you for calling back, she said when she answered. I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't, I admitted. But your message seemed sincere. It was. She paused. Look, I know you're angry about the email you sent Mom and Dad. They're furious. Good, I replied. Now they know how it feels to have someone dismiss their financial crisis. I get that. But Alyssa, this isn't just about them. It's about me and my baby too. And my college fund wasn't just about me, I countered. It was about my future, my dreams, the career I could have had. You're right. The simple admission stunned me into silence. You're absolutely right, and I'm sorry. I was so caught up in my wedding and my relationship that I never stopped to think about what we were taking from you. It was wrong. I hadn't expected this level of self-awareness from my sister. Thank you for saying that. I'm not asking you to bail us out, she continued. But maybe we could talk in person. There might be ways you could help us figure this out without just writing a check. I considered her request. I could meet this weekend. Not at our parents' house, though. There's a coffee shop near you, the Daily Grind, Saturday at 10. I know it well, I said, remembering my years of working there. I'll see you then. I arrived at the Daily Grind 15 minutes early on Saturday, choosing a table in the corner that offered both privacy and a clear view of the entrance. It was strange being a customer in the place where I had once worked so many exhausting shifts. A few of the older staff members recognized me and waved, but most were new faces. Natalie arrived precisely at 10, looking nothing like the polished socialite from her social media posts. Her designer clothes and perfect makeup had been replaced by jeans, a simple sweater, and a face bare of cosmetics. Her hair was pulled back in a casual ponytail, and there was a noticeable small bump beneath her sweater. For the first time in years, she looked like the sister I had grown up with rather than a stranger playing a role. "Thanks for meeting me," she said, sliding into the chair across from mine. "It means a lot." I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. "How are you feeling the pregnancy, I mean?" "Physically okay. Morning sickness isn't fun, but it's manageable." She placed a protective hand over her stomach. "Emotionally, that's another story." "I can imagine," I said, though truthfully, I couldn't. My life had been challenging, but I had never experienced the complete collapse of a marriage or the prospect of single parenthood. "No, you can't," Natalie replied, surprising me with her directness. "Just like I couldn't imagine what it felt like when they took your college fund. We've both been through things the other hasn't experienced." I acknowledged this with a slight nod. "Tell me what happened with Tyler. The full story, not the version Mom gave me." Over the next hour, Natalie detailed the gradual unraveling of her seemingly perfect life. Tyler had been running an investment scam for years, using new clients' money to pay returns to existing investors and funding their lavish lifestyle. When the market took a downturn, the scheme collapsed. He had cleaned out their accounts and disappeared, leaving behind millions in debt and angry investors. "I had no idea," she insisted, tears welling in her eyes. "I thought he was just good at what he did. I never questioned where the money came from or why we could afford everything." "You never questioned anything," I observed. "Not about Tyler, not about your wedding budget, not about where my college money went." She winced. "I deserve that. You're right. I was spoiled and self-centered. I just accepted that whatever I wanted would be provided no matter the cost to others." Her admission was disarming. This wasn't the defensive, entitled sister I'd expected. "The investigation cleared me of involvement," she continued, "but it didn't clear our debts. Everything was in both our names, the house, the cars, the credit cards. It's all gone now, repossessed or liquidated to pay back some of the investors." "And Mom and Dad?" I asked. "How did they end up risking their house?" Natalie looked down, guilt evident on her face. "When things first started going bad, Tyler convinced them he just needed a temporary loan to get through a cash flow issue. He promised huge returns. They remortgaged the house and gave him the money. $200,000 gone." I whistled softly. "That's far more than what they're asking me for." "They used their retirement savings to make payments for a while," she explained. "Now that's gone too. The $75,000 they need would catch them up on the missed payments and give them some breathing room." "And you?" I asked. "What's your plan?" "I don't have one," she admitted. "I've been applying for jobs, but it's been 6 years since I worked. My skills are outdated. And now with the pregnancy," she trailed off. "What about your friends, the ones from the wedding party, the social circle you were always part of?" "Gone," she said simply. "Turns out they were Tyler's friends, or friends of our money. When everything fell apart, they disappeared. We sat in silence for a moment, the background noise of the coffee shop filling the space between us. "I'm not asking you to fix this," Natalie finally said. "I know $75,000 is a lot of money even with your success. I just thought maybe you could help us figure out options. You understand financial stuff better than any of us." I studied my sister's face, looking for signs of the manipulation I had grown accustomed to from my family. Instead, I saw something unfamiliar, genuine humility. "I need you to understand something," I said carefully. "If I help in any way, it won't be unconditional. Things between us, between me and our parents, can't go back to how they were." "I know," she nodded. "We don't deserve your help. But I'm asking anyway, not just for me or mom and dad, but for my baby. Your niece or nephew shouldn't have to start life homeless because of our mistakes." It was the mention of the child that finally broke through my remaining defenses. Whatever resentment I held toward my family, it couldn't extend to an unborn baby who had no part in our history. "I'll think about it," I promised. "Not just about the money, but about ways to address the whole situation. I'll let you know what I decide." Natalie reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Thank you for even considering it. And Alyssa, I truly am sorry for everything." Then as I watched her walk away, her shoulders slightly hunched, as if carrying an invisible weight, I realized something important. The satisfaction I had felt sending that dismissive email had been momentarily sweet, but ultimately hollow. True healing wouldn't come from revenge, but from finding a way forward that honored my own boundaries while allowing for the possibility of reconciliation. Over the next week, I analyzed my family's financial situation as thoroughly as I would a client's. I reviewed property values, mortgage rates, job markets, and assistance programs. I calculated budgets and projections, and I came to several conclusions. First, my parents' house could be saved, but not without significant lifestyle changes on their part. Second, Natalie would need education and job training to become self-sufficient. And third, any help I provided would need to come with conditions to ensure long-term financial responsibility. I drafted a proposal and scheduled a meeting with all three of them at their house. When I arrived that Sunday afternoon, the atmosphere was tense. My father looked older than I remembered, stress etched in the lines of his face. My mother seemed smaller somehow, her usual confidence diminished. Natalie sat quietly in the corner, her pregnancy now more visible. "Thank you for coming," my father said formally. "We appreciate you taking the time." "I've been thinking about your situation." I began, opening my laptop on their dining room table. "And I've worked out a potential solution." I outlined my proposal. I would provide the money to bring their mortgage current, but with several conditions. First, they would all participate in financial counseling. Second, my father would need to look for additional work to supplement his income. Third, my mother would return to full-time employment. Fourth, Natalie would enroll in a vocational training program to develop marketable skills. Additionally, I continued, I want a formal acknowledgement of what happened with my college fund. Not just a casual apology, but a real recognition of the impact it had on my life and education. My parents exchanged uncomfortable glances. "Is that really necessary?" my father asked. "It was so long ago." "It is necessary," I said firmly, "because without acknowledgement, nothing will change. This isn't about punishment, it's about honesty and rebuilding trust." "I think it's fair," Natalie spoke up. "We need to own what we did." My mother looked at her in surprise, then back at me. "You're right," she said quietly. "What we did was wrong. We prioritized a wedding over your education, and we never properly apologized or tried to make it right." "We were wrong," my father added, his voice rough with emotion. "I've regretted it for years, but was too proud to admit it. I'm sorry, Alyssa. Truly sorry." "I accept your apology," I said, feeling a weight lifting from my shoulders. "Now, let's focus on moving forward." Over the next several months, my role shifted from estranged daughter to financial advisor and occasionally reluctant family counselor. I helped my father update his resume and find consulting work that supplemented his regular job. I connected my mother with former colleagues who helped her secure a position at a local bank. I researched vocational programs for Natalie, eventually finding one in medical billing that could be completed before her baby arrived. There were setbacks and disagreements. Old patterns tried to reassert themselves. My parents occasionally slipped into treating me as the child rather than the adult who was helping rescue them. Natalie sometimes fell back into entitlement when things became difficult, but slowly, gradually, our family dynamic began to transform. 6 months after our initial agreement, my parents were current on their mortgage payments. Natalie had completed her training and secured a part-time job she could do from home after the baby was born. And most importantly, we had established a new relationship based on mutual respect rather than obligation. When my niece Sophia was born in early spring, I was there at the hospital holding Natalie's hand through a difficult delivery. Looking at the tiny, perfect face of this new life, I felt the last pieces of my resentment finally dissolve. "Would you like to hold her?" Natalie asked, exhausted but glowing with new motherhood. As I cradled my niece, I made her a silent promise. I would establish a college fund for her, one that could never be touched for any other purpose. I would ensure she had educational opportunities, regardless of what happened with our family's finances. And I would teach her the value of setting boundaries and standing up for herself. Lessons I had learned the hard way. A year after my initial intervention, I had established my own financial counseling side business, helping families avoid the mistakes mine had made. I used part of the proceeds to create a scholarship fund for students facing unexpected financial hardships, particularly those whose family support had disappeared. The relationship with my family continued to evolve. We would never be the picture-perfect unit that my parents had once tried to project to the world. There were still occasional tensions and disagreements, but there was also a new foundation of honesty and respect that had never existed before. Looking back on the journey from that devastating evening, when my college dreams were shattered to the present, I realized something important. While I wouldn't wish my experience on anyone, the challenges had forced me to discover my own strength and resilience. I had built a life of independence and integrity, values I might never have fully developed if my path had been easier. In the end, the most valuable education I received wasn't from Harvard or any other institution. It was the hard-won wisdom that came from navigating betrayal, establishing boundaries, and finding the courage to forge my own path. That knowledge couldn't be measured in degrees or dollars, but it had shaped me into someone I was genuinely proud to be. As I watched Sophia taking her first tentative steps in my parents' living room, her tiny hands gripping my fingers for support, I think about the legacy I want to leave her. Not just financial security, though I've ensured she'll have that, but an example of dignity, forgiveness, and self-respect. Those are the true gifts worth more than any college fund or inheritance could ever be. Have you ever had to rebuild trust with family after a betrayal? What boundaries did you set to protect yourself while allowing for healing? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that sometimes the most painful chapters of our lives can lead to unexpected strength and wisdom. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, your worth isn't determined by how others treat you, but by how you choose to move forward despite the obstacles placed in your path.